Elena Martinez never imagined that correcting a simple calculation error would seal her fate. When the ruthless Mafia boss Vincent Kane caught her red pen marking his ledger, she expected fury, maybe even death. Instead, his dark eyes gleamed with something far more dangerous: fascination. As his men closed the doors behind her, Vincent leaned back in his leather chair and smiled. "You just became the most valuable person in this building, Miss Martinez, and the most trapped." If you're listening to this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what part of the world you're listening from. The rain hammered against the windows of the Kane estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, turning the manicured lawns into a watercolor blur of green and gray. Elena Martinez pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished floor. The sound echoed through the empty corridor, a lonely rhythm that matched the beating of her heart. She'd been working here for 3 months, invisible among the staff, just another face in the machinery that kept Vincent Kane's world running smoothly. At 24, Elena had learned to make herself small. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a tight bun, her uniform pressed and spotless, her eyes downcast. The estate was beautiful, all dark wood and expensive art, but beauty here came with a price. Everyone knew what Vincent Kane was. Everyone knew the men in dark suits weren't bodyguards but soldiers. Everyone knew the basement wasn't for storage. Elena had rules: clean quickly, don't ask questions, never ever go into the study when Mr. Kane was working. But Maria, the head housekeeper, had called in sick, and someone needed to empty the trash in the study before the evening meeting. Elena drew the short straw. She knocked 3 times, her knuckles barely making a sound against the heavy oak door. No answer. She waited, counting to 30 in her head, then slowly turned the handle. The study was empty, thank God. The massive desk dominated the room, its surface covered with papers, a laptop, and a crystal tumbler with 2 fingers of amber liquid. The walls were lined with books that probably had never been read, and a fireplace crackled softly in the corner, fighting against the November chill that seeped through the old windows. Elena moved quickly, emptying the small wastebasket beside the desk. As she turned to leave, a gust of wind from the partially open window scattered several papers onto the floor. She cursed under her breath. Maria's first rule was never to touch Mr. Kane's documents, but leaving them on the floor seemed worse. She knelt and gathered them carefully, trying not to look at the contents. But her eyes, trained by 4 years of community college accounting classes she'd taken at night, caught something. Numbers, columns of numbers, and they were wrong. Elena froze, the papers trembling in her hands. It was a ledger, clearly important, with transactions listed in neat rows, but the sum at the bottom was off by $50,000. A simple addition error, the kind her professors would have marked in red ink, the kind that, in a business like Vincent Kane's, could mean the difference between profit and loss, between trust and suspicion, between life and death. She should leave. She should put the papers back and forget she'd seen anything. Instead, Elena found herself reaching for the red pen that sat in the cup on Kane's desk. Her hand moved almost automatically, circling the error, writing the correct sum in the margin with a small arrow. She'd done it 1,000 times on her own homework, on her younger brother's math tests. It was instinct. The moment the pen left the paper, reality crashed back. Elena's blood turned to ice. What had she done? She'd just marked up Vincent Kane's private documents. She'd just corrected the most dangerous man in Connecticut, like he was a student who'd failed basic arithmetic. Interesting. The voice came from behind her, smooth and dark as the whiskey in the tumbler. Elena spun around, the papers falling from her hands. Vincent Kane stood in the doorway, perfectly still, watching her with eyes the color of slate. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp features and dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car, and he moved with the fluid grace of a predator. "Mr. Kane, I'm so sorry, I was just..." Elena's words tumbled over each other, her accent thickening with panic. "The wind, the papers fell, I didn't mean to. You corrected my math." His voice was neutral, unreadable. He walked into the room, each step deliberate, and picked up the papers from where they'd scattered. His eyes scanned the red marks, and something flickered across his face. Surprise? Amusement? Anger? "It was an accident, I shouldn't have looked. I'll go, Is it correct?" He looked up at her, and Elena felt pinned by that gaze. "Your correction. Is it right?" She swallowed hard. Lying would be worse than the truth. Yes, sir. The sum was off by 50,000. The error was in the third column, line 17. Someone transposed two numbers. Vincent Kane stared at her for a long moment, and Elena was certain this was how her life would end. In a beautiful study in Connecticut, killed for the crime of being good at math. Then slowly he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who just found something unexpected and valuable. What's your name? Elena Martinez, sir. Elena. He tested the name, rolling it around like the whiskey in his glass. How long have you been cleaning my house? 3 months, sir. Me. And in 3 months, you're the first person to notice this error. Do you know what this ledger is for, Elena? She shook her head quickly. No, sir. I don't want to know. That made him laugh. A short, sharp sound. Smart girl. But it's too late for that now. You've seen it. You've understood it. That makes you either very useful or very dangerous. He walked to his desk, pressing a button on the phone. Marcus, come to the study, and bring Thomas. Elena's legs felt weak. Marcus was Kane's right hand, a mountain of a man with cold eyes. Thomas was the one who handled problems. Everyone on the staff knew what that meant. Please, Elena whispered. I won't tell anyone. I'll forget I saw anything. I have a brother. He's only 16. He needs... Relax, Miss Martinez. I'm not going to hurt you. Vincent poured himself another drink, his movements casual. I'm going to offer you a job. The door opened, and Marcus stepped in, followed by Thomas. Both men looked at Elena, then at Vincent, waiting for instructions. Miss Martinez is no longer part of the cleaning staff, Vincent said, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. As of now, she works directly for me. Set her up in the East Wing guest room. Make sure she has everything she needs. And Marcus? He paused, that dangerous smile returning. Don't let her leave. Elena's world tilted. The rain continued to hammer against the windows, but inside the study, everything had changed. She'd walked in as a maid, invisible and safe. She was leaving as something else entirely. A prisoner, a tool, a piece in a game she didn't understand. As Marcus's heavy hand landed on her shoulder, guiding her toward the door, Elena caught one last glimpse of Vincent Kane. He was studying the corrected ledger, his expression thoughtful, and in that moment, she realized the truth. She hadn't just corrected a math mistake. She'd corrected the wrong man's math mistake. And in Vincent Kane's world, that changed everything. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a cell door locking. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing away the last traces of the life Elena Martinez used to have. The guest room in the East Wing was larger than Elena's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate's gardens, now dark and rain-soaked under the November sky. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, dressed in silk sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. There was a sitting area with a velvet sofa, a private bathroom with marble everything, and a walk-in closet that Marcus had informed her would be stocked appropriately by morning. Elena stood in the center of the room, still wearing her cleaning uniform, feeling like an imposter, or a prisoner. She wasn't sure which was more accurate. Marcus had left her with instructions. Dinner would be brought to her room at 7. Mr. Kane would see her in his office at 9 the following morning. She was not to leave the East Wing without escort. She was not to contact anyone outside the estate. Her phone had been confiscated for security purposes. When she'd protested about her brother, Marcus had simply said, "He'll be taken care of," in a tone that could mean anything from, "We'll make sure he's safe," to, "We'll make sure he's silent." Elena sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking. This morning, she'd woken up in her cramped studio apartment in Bridgeport, worried about making rent, and whether her brother Diego had remembered to eat breakfast before school. Now she was trapped in a mansion, held by a man who could make her disappear with a phone call. The red pen. That stupid red pen. Why hadn't she just left the papers on the floor? Because you're your father's daughter, a voice whispered in her head. Because you can't see something wrong without trying to fix it. Her father had been an accountant in Mexico City, honest to a fault. That honesty had gotten him killed when he'd refused to cook the books for the wrong people. Elena had been 19, Diego 11. They'd fled north with nothing but their mother's savings and their father's last piece of advice. Keep your head down, mija. In this world, being right can get you killed. She'd kept her head down for 5 years. And then, in one moment of instinct, she'd raised it. A knock at the door made her jump. A young woman entered, pushing a cart laden with covered dishes. She was maybe 20. The with nervous eyes and the same careful invisibility Elena had perfected. "Your dinner, miss," the girl said, not quite meeting Elena's eyes. "Thank you. What's your name?" "Sophie, miss. You don't have to call me that. I'm Elena. I was cleaning toilets this morning." Sophie's eyes flickered with something. Sympathy? Relief? But she kept her professional mask in place. "Mr. Kane says you're to be treated as a guest, miss. Those are my instructions. A guest who can't leave. A guest whose phone has been taken." Elena bit back the bitter comment, and instead asked, "How long have you worked here?" 2 years, miss." Is Mr. Kane fair to the staff?" Sophie's hand stilled on the cart. When she spoke, her voice was carefully neutral. "Mr. Kane rewards loyalty and competence. He doesn't tolerate betrayal or stupidity. If you're smart and you do what you're told, you'll be fine." She paused at the door, then added in a whisper, "But don't trust the kindness. It's always a test." Then she was gone, leaving Elena alone with a dinner she couldn't eat, and advice she didn't want. The night crawled by. Elena tried the door, unlocked, surprisingly, but when she stepped into the hallway, she found a man in a dark suit stationed at the end of the corridor. He didn't speak, didn't move, just watched her with flat eyes until she retreated back into her room. She didn't sleep. Every sound made her jump. The old house settling, the rain finally stopping, footsteps in distant hallways. She kept thinking about Diego, wondering if he'd come home from school to find her gone. Would Kane's people really take care of him? Or was that a threat? Her brother was smart, smarter than her, with a full scholarship to a good high school. He wanted to be an engineer. He deserved better than to be leverage in whatever game Vincent Kane was playing. At 8:30 the next morning, Marcus knocked and entered without waiting for permission. He carried a garment bag and a box. "Mr. Kane expects you in 30 minutes. Wear this." He laid the items on the bed. "There's coffee and breakfast in the sitting room. Don't be late." Elena waited until he left, then unzipped the garment bag. Inside was a dress. Simple, elegant, charcoal gray with a modest neckline and hem that would fall just below her knees. The box contained shoes, low heels in black leather, and a few other essentials. Everything was her size. Of course it was. Vincent Kane struck her as a man who paid attention to details. She showered quickly, hyper-aware of the luxury around her, and dressed in the clothes he'd provided. The woman who looked back at her from the mirror was a stranger, polished, professional, almost confident. Not a maid, not a prisoner, something in between. Marcus returned exactly at 9 to escort her through the mansion. In daylight, the estate was even more impressive, and more intimidating. They passed men in suits who nodded at Marcus and assessed Elena with cold calculation. They walked through a gallery hung with paintings that belonged in museums. Everything whispered of power and money and danger. Vincent Kane's office was in the south wing, a corner room with windows overlooking Long Island Sound. He sat behind a massive desk, working on his laptop, and didn't look up when Marcus ushered Elena inside. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from him. Elena sat, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. She'd learned long ago that showing fear was an invitation to predators. Vincent finished whatever he was doing, closed the laptop, and finally looked at her. In the morning light, he was even more striking, and more dangerous. There was an intelligence in his eyes that reminded her uncomfortably of her father. But where her father's intelligence had been gentle, Vincent Kane's was sharp as a blade. "Tell me about yourself, Elena Martinez." "There's not much to tell, Mr. Kane. Humor me." "Where did you learn accounting?" "Community college. I took night classes for 4 years while working days. I'm 3 credits short of my associate's degree." "Why didn't you finish?" "My mother got sick. The medical bills." She trailed off. "Some stories didn't need finishing. And yet you're working as a maid instead of using the education you have." Elena met his eyes. "Have you ever tried to get an accounting job without a degree and with a last name like Martinez? Most places see the resume and assume I'm lying about my qualifications. The ones that don't assume I'm here illegally." Something flickered in his expression. Not sympathy, exactly, but understanding. "You're legal? Born in Mexico City. Naturalized 6 years ago. My brother and I are citizens. We did it the right way." There was pride in her voice, and defiance. Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I have a problem, Miss Martinez. My organization handles a lot of money. Legitimate businesses, investments, various enterprises. The man who's been managing my books is competent, but he's not detail-oriented. Yesterday's error? That's the 3rd one I've found in 2 months. In my business, errors like that can be fatal. They suggest either incompetence or theft. Either way, they make me look weak. So fire him and hire someone better. I did. I fired him last night, and now I'm hiring someone better. He paused. You. Elena's stomach dropped. Mr. Kane, I can't. You can, and you will. Your salary will be $200,000 a year, plus room and board here at the estate. Your brother will be moved to a better school. I'm thinking Choate or Hotchkiss, with all expenses paid. Your mother's medical debts will be cleared. In exchange, you will manage my financial records, identify inefficiencies, and make sure every dollar is accounted for. It was too much. It was everything she'd ever wanted, and everything she'd ever feared. And if I say no, Vincent's smile was cold. You won't, because you're smart enough to know that you've already seen too much, and because you want to protect your brother. And because, Miss Martinez, I think you're tired of being invisible. I'm offering you a chance to be seen. He was right, and Elena hated him for it. She thought of Diego, of the scholarship that was good but not enough, of the apartment with bars on the windows and sirens every night. She thought of her mother's grave, paid for with money borrowed from people who charged interest that never stopped compounding. She thought of the red pen, and how one moment of instinct had led her here. I want to see my brother. I want to know he's safe. Done. Marcus will arrange it for this weekend. Supervised, of course. I want my phone back. No, but you can call your brother twice a week from a monitored line. I want to finish my degree. Vincent considered this. Online classes, taken here. Agreed. Elena took a breath. She was negotiating with a Mafia boss. She was negotiating for her life. And I want your word that my brother stays out of whatever this is. No matter what happens to me, he stays clean. For the first time, Vincent's expression softened slightly. You have my word. Diego Martinez will never be touched by my business. He'll have every opportunity to become whatever he wants to be. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough, but it was all she was going to get. Then I accept, Mr. Kane. Vincent, if you're going to be handling my money, we're past formalities. He stood, extending his hand across the desk. Welcome to the family, Elena. She shook his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. His hand was warm, and she hated that she noticed. As she left the office, escorted once again by Marcus, Elena caught sight of her reflection in a hallway mirror. The woman in the gray dress looked capable, professional, almost powerful, but Elena could see the truth beneath the surface. She was a bird in a gilded cage, and Vincent Kane held the key. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained gray, heavy with the promise of more storms to come. In the distance, Long Island Sound stretched toward the horizon, vast and cold and impossible to cross. Elena had made her choice. Now she would have to live with it. 3 weeks into her new position, Elena had learned several important truths about Vincent Kane's empire. First, it was vast, sprawling across legitimate businesses like construction companies, restaurants, and real estate developments, all carefully layered to obscure the less legitimate operations beneath. Second, it was surprisingly well organized, with systems and hierarchies that would have impressed her business professors. Third, it was bleeding money, and nobody seemed to have noticed. Elena sat in her new office, a smaller room adjacent to Vincent's, connected by a door that was usually open, surrounded by monitors, spreadsheets, and the kind of financial chaos that made her accountant's heart both sing and weep. She'd spent the past 3 weeks doing nothing but auditing, tracing every transaction, building a complete picture of the organization's finances. What she'd found was troubling. You're frowning. Vincent's voice came from the connecting doorway. He leaned against the frame, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking more human than she'd yet seen him. It was late, past midnight, and most of the estate was dark and quiet. I'm always frowning lately, Elena said, not looking up from her screen. In 3 weeks, they'd fallen into an odd rhythm. He treated her like a colleague, sometimes even like a friend, asking her opinion on matters that had nothing to do with money. She treated him like a boss, maintaining professional distance, trying to forget that he was a criminal, and she was complicit in his crimes. It was easier some days than others. Find something interesting? He walked into her office, bringing with him the scent of expensive cologne and coffee. Elena pulled up a spreadsheet, highlighting several columns in red. Your construction company in Stamford, the one that's supposedly renovating the old textile mill? What about it? It's a money pit. You've invested $3 million over the past 18 months, but the project is nowhere near completion. According to the reports, you're experiencing constant delays, permit issues, supply problems, labor disputes. But when I cross-reference the expenses with actual permit filings and supply orders, nothing matches up. Vincent moved behind her chair, studying the screen over her shoulder. Elena was acutely aware of his proximity, the heat of him at her back. Explain. Someone's stealing from you. They're reporting expenses that don't exist and pocketing the difference. I estimate you've lost about $800,000 to this scheme so far. The silence that followed was heavy. When Vincent spoke, his voice was soft and dangerous. Who? The project manager, Anthony Russo. He's been with you for 5 years, according to his file. He's also been skimming for at least 2 of those years. I found similar patterns in a Newark project from 2023. Vincent straightened, pulling out his phone. Marcus, I need you in Elena's office. Now. He ended the call and looked at Elena with something that might have been respect. 3 weeks, and you found something my previous accountant missed for 2 years. Your previous accountant was either incompetent or in on it. He was in on it. That's why he's no longer with us. The casual way he said it made Elena's blood run cold. Show me everything. For the next hour, Elena walked Vincent and Marcus through the evidence, pointing out the discrepancies, the false invoices, the shell companies that existed only on paper. Marcus took notes, his expression growing darker with each revelation. How much total? Vincent asked when she finished. From Russo alone? Probably close to $2 million across multiple projects. But Mr. Kane, Vincent, that's not the biggest problem. Both men looked at her. Elena pulled up another file, this one marked with red flags throughout. Russo couldn't have done this alone. He needed someone higher up to approve the fake invoices, someone with access to your accounts. I think you have a bigger problem than one thieving project manager. Vincent's jaw tightened. You're saying I have a traitor in my inner circle. I'm saying someone with significant authority has been helping Russo steal from you. And if they've been doing it here, they're probably doing it elsewhere. I need more time to trace the approval chains. But Vincent, you need to be careful who you trust. Marcus and Vincent exchanged a look that Elena couldn't read. Then Vincent nodded. Do it. Trace everything. I want names, amounts, evidence. And Elena, this stays between the 3 of us. Tell no one else what you found. Understood? Understood. After Marcus left, Vincent remained, pouring himself a drink from the bar cart he'd installed in her office. He offered her one, and for the first time, she accepted. The whiskey burned going down, but it steadied her nerves. You're good at this, Vincent said, settling into the chair across from her desk. Better than good. You see patterns other people miss. My father taught me. He used to say numbers tell stories if you know how to listen. Your father was an accountant? Elena nodded, surprised he didn't already know. She assumed he'd had her investigated thoroughly. In Mexico City, he was honest, which turned out to be a fatal flaw. How did he die? She shouldn't tell him. It was too personal, too revealing. But the whiskey, and the late hour, and the strange intimacy of the quiet office loosened her tongue. He was hired by a businessman who was laundering money for a cartel. My father found the discrepancies, reported them to the authorities. 2 weeks later, he was killed in what the police called a robbery gone wrong. They never caught anyone. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. How old were you? 19. Diego was 11. My mother never recovered. She died 2 years later, officially from cancer, but really from a broken heart. And yet you're here, doing the same work that got your father killed. Elena met his eyes. I'm here because you didn't give me a choice. But yes, I'm doing the same work, because my father was right. Numbers tell stories, and someone needs to listen. Even if, especially if, the story is about powerful people doing wrong things. Something shifted in Vincent's expression. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified of you, Elena corrected. But fear doesn't change what's right and what's wrong. The numbers don't lie, Vincent. Russo stole from you. Someone helped him. That's the truth, whether you're a legitimate businessman or a criminal. The math doesn't care. He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. The math doesn't care. I like that. He stood, finishing his drink. Get some sleep, Elena. Tomorrow we start hunting traitors. But Elena didn't sleep. She worked through the night, tracing transactions, building spreadsheets, following the money through its winding path. By dawn, she had a name. Thomas Brennan, Vincent's financial controller. The man who approved all major expenditures. The man who'd been with Vincent for 8 years. The man Vincent trusted. When she showed Vincent the evidence the next morning, his face went blank. The expression of a man who'd just been betrayed by someone he considered family. "Are you certain?" His voice was carefully controlled. "The approvals all have his digital signature. The timing matches. And Vincent, 3 days ago, Brennan transferred $500,000 from one of your holding companies to an offshore account. I don't think he knows I've found it yet, but he's preparing to run." Vincent stood at the window, looking out over the Sound. The November sun was weak, casting pale light over the gray water. "Thomas has been with me since the beginning. He was at my father's funeral. He's my daughter's godfather." Elena hadn't known Vincent had a daughter. The revelation surprised her, humanized him in a way that made her uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, but the evidence is clear. Show me everything. Every transaction, every approval, every transfer. I want to be absolutely certain before I act." They spent the day in her office, going through the records line by line. Vincent asked sharp questions, challenged her conclusions, looked for alternative explanations. But the story the numbers told was unambiguous. Thomas Brennan had been stealing from Vincent Kane for at least 3 years, using Anthony Russo and probably others as his tools, siphoning millions from the empire he was supposed to protect. By evening, Vincent's face was carved from stone. "Marcus, my office. Bring Thomas." Elena started to leave, but Vincent stopped her. "Stay. You found this. You should see how it ends." She wanted to refuse. She didn't want to see what Vincent Kane did to traitors, but she also knew she didn't have a choice. This was the world she'd entered when she picked up that red pen. Thomas Brennan arrived 15 minutes later, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and an easy smile. "Vincent, you wanted to see me? I'm supposed to meet with the Newark contractors in an hour. Cancel it." Vincent's voice was flat. "Sit down, Thomas." Something in Vincent's tone made Brennan's smile falter. He sat, his eyes flickering to Elena, to Marcus standing by the door, back to Vincent. "What's this about?" "It's about $2 million. It's about 3 years of theft. It's about you betraying everything we built together." Vincent slid a folder across the desk. Elena found it all. Every fake invoice, every unauthorized transfer, every lie. "It's over, Thomas." Brennan's face went white. He opened the folder, his hands shaking, and Elena watched as he saw his crimes laid out in neat columns and highlighted cells. For a moment, she almost felt sorry for him. Then he looked up, and his expression hardened. "That little bitch. You're going to trust some maid over me? Vincent, I've been with you for 8 years. She's been here 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And she's proven more loyal than you've been in 8 years. Vincent's voice could have cut glass. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you were smarter than me? I made you rich." Brennan stood, his voice rising. "Half the systems you use, I built them. You'd still be running numbers on paper if it wasn't for me. I deserved more than you were paying me. So you stole it. I took what I earned." The room fell silent. Then Vincent nodded to Marcus, who moved forward with frightening speed. In seconds, Brennan was restrained, his bravado crumbling into fear. "Vincent, please. We can work this out. I'll pay it back. Every penny. Just give me a chance." "You had your chance. You had 8 years of chances." Vincent stood, buttoning his jacket. "Marcus, take him to the warehouse. I'll deal with him later." He looked at Brennan with something that might have been sadness. "You were my friend, Thomas. That's the only reason you're still breathing. But by tomorrow, you'll wish you weren't." As Marcus dragged Brennan from the office, the man's eyes locked on Elena with pure hatred. "This is your fault, you little—" The door closed, cutting off his words. Elena stood frozen, her heart pounding. She'd just signed a man's death warrant with her spreadsheets and her red pen. Vincent poured 2 drinks, handing her one. "You did the right thing." "Did I?" Her voice shook. "What are you going to do to him?" "Nothing you need to worry about. He's going to die because I found some discrepancies in a ledger. He's going to die because he betrayed me, because he stole from me, because in my world, that's unforgivable." Vincent moved closer, his eyes intense. "Elena, listen to me. Thomas made his choices. You didn't force him to steal. You didn't force him to betray 8 years of trust. You just did your job. You told the truth. What happens next is on him, not you." But Elena couldn't shake the image of Brennan's face, the fear in his eyes. She'd known abstractly what Vincent Kane was, but knowing and seeing were different things. "I want to go to my room," she whispered. Vincent studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Go. Take tomorrow off. Rest. Elena fled to the East Wing, to her beautiful prison, and for the first time since arriving at the estate, she cried. She cried for Thomas Brennan, who'd made terrible choices. She cried for herself, trapped in a world where truth could kill. She cried for her father, who died for the same principles she was now using to serve a criminal. Outside her window, the sound was dark and restless, reflecting the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Elena watched the water and wondered how much of herself she'd lose before Vincent Kane finally let her go. If he ever let her go at all. Elena didn't take the day off. She couldn't. Staying in her room meant thinking about Thomas Brennan, about what was happening to him in whatever warehouse Vincent had mentioned. Working meant focusing on numbers, on the clean logic of mathematics where everything had a right answer, and wrong didn't involve blood. She was deep in a review of the restaurant accounts when the door to her office burst open. A girl, no, a young woman, maybe 17, stormed in, her dark hair wild, her eyes blazing with fury. "Where is he?" she demanded. Elena blinked, startled. "I'm sorry, who?" "My father, Vincent Kane. Where is he?" This was Vincent's daughter. Elena could see the resemblance now. The same sharp features, the same intensity, the same way of looking at people like they were puzzles to be solved. "He's in a meeting in Hartford. He won't be back until this evening." The girl's eyes narrowed, taking in Elena's office, her position, her presence. "Who the hell are you?" "Elena Martinez. I'm Mr. Kane's accountant." "Since when does my father have an accountant working out of the house?" The girl moved closer, and Elena saw she was wearing a prep school uniform, chote, if the crest on her blazer was accurate. "And since when does he let anyone use Uncle Thomas's office?" Elena's stomach tightened. I didn't know this was Mr. Brennan's office." "It was. Before you." The girl's voice was sharp with accusation. "Before you showed up and ruined everything. I know what you did. I know you got Uncle Thomas fired. He's been part of this family since I was 9 years old, and you got him thrown out like garbage. I'm sorry. It wasn't personal. I was just doing my job." "Your job? Your job is destroying people's lives?" The girl's voice cracked, and Elena realized she wasn't just angry. She was hurt. "Uncle Thomas was good to me. When my mom died, when Dad was too busy with his business to notice I existed, Uncle Thomas was there. He taught me to drive. He helped me with my homework. He remembered my birthday when Dad forgot. And now he's gone because of you." Elena stood, keeping her voice gentle. "I'm sorry about your mother, and I'm sorry you lost someone important to you. But your uncle, Mr. Brennan, he stole from your father. A lot of money, over a long time. I just found the evidence. Maybe he had a good reason. Maybe Dad wasn't paying him enough. Did you ever think of that? Stealing is still stealing, no matter the reason." The girl's face flushed with anger. "You don't know anything about us, about this family. You're just some outsider who thinks she can come in and—" "Olivia." Vincent's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "That's enough." "Dad, I thought you were in Hartford." Meeting ended early. Good thing, apparently. He walked into the room, his eyes moving between his daughter and Elena. "Apologize to Miss Martinez." "Why should I? She's the one who—" "Now, Olivia." The girl's jaw set in a stubborn line that reminded Elena painfully of Diego. "I'm sorry," she said, the words clearly forced. Then she turned back to her father. "But Dad, Uncle Thomas, is no longer your concern. Go to your room. We'll discuss this later." "But—" "Now!" Olivia shot Elena one last furious look, then stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence she left was heavy. "I'm sorry," Elena said quietly. "I didn't know this was Brennan's office. I didn't know she was so close to him." Vincent moved to the window, his shoulders tense. Thomas was good to her. He filled a gap I left. I was building this empire, protecting our family, and I didn't notice my daughter needed a father, not just a provider. He turned to face Elena. "She's right to be angry, just wrong about the target. She's grieving. People she loves keep leaving her. Her mother died when she was 10. Cancer. I promised her I'd always be there, that she'd never lose anyone else. And then I got so caught up in the business, in maintaining power, that I forgot to actually be present." He smiled bitterly. "Some father I am." Elena saw him differently in that moment, not as the dangerous Mafia boss, but as a man struggling with the same impossible balance her own father had faced. "My father used to say that providing for your family and being present for them are both forms of love. You can't always do both perfectly. Your father sounds like he was a wise man. He was. He was also wrong sometimes. Diego needed him alive more than he needed him righteous. Elena paused. But I understand why he made the choices he did. Sometimes doing the right thing costs everything. Vincent studied her. Is that what you think you're doing? The right thing? I don't know anymore. I found theft. I reported it. That's my job. But I didn't think about the ripple effects. About people like Olivia who'd be hurt by the truth. The truth hurts regardless of whether we speak it. You didn't create the situation. Thomas did. Vincent moved closer. But I appreciate that you understand the cost. Most people in my world don't think beyond the immediate consequences. Before Elena could respond, her phone, the monitored line Vincent had given her, rang. She glanced at the screen. Diego. Take it, Vincent said. Elena answered. Diego? Is everything okay? Her brother's voice was tight with worry. Lena, where are you? You haven't been home in 3 weeks. Your landlord says you moved out, but you didn't tell me anything. What's going on? Elena's eyes met Vincent's. He nodded slightly. Permission to explain, within limits. I got a new job, Diego. A really good one. I'm living at my employer's estate now. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Everything happened so fast. But what kind of job? Why can't you come home? Why do you sound scared? I'm not scared. I'm fine. The job is accounting work and it pays really well. Well enough that we can talk about transferring you to a better school. I don't want a better school. I want my sister back. Lena, something's wrong. I can hear it in your voice. Elena's throat tightened. Diego had always been able to read her. Nothing's wrong. I promise. I miss you. Can we meet this weekend? Maybe lunch somewhere? There was a pause. Okay. But Lena, if you're in trouble, if someone's making you do something you don't want to do, you can tell me. We'll figure it out together. I know, Hermanito. I love you. Love you too. After she hung up, Elena found Vincent watching her with an unreadable expression. He's smart, Vincent said. He knows something's off. He's too smart for his own good sometimes. Elena set the phone down. Can I really see him this weekend? Yes. Marcus will drive you to a restaurant in New Haven. You'll have 2 hours, supervised from a distance. Diego will be safe, Elena. I promised you that. And after, when he asks questions I can't answer, when he realizes I'm trapped here, you're not trapped. You're employed. With guards at my door and my phone monitored and no way to leave without permission. That's called being a prisoner, Vincent, no matter how nice the cell is. He didn't deny it. Instead, he said, give it 6 months. Help me clean up the organization, find the other leaks, build systems that work. After that, if you want to leave, we'll discuss it. Discuss it. Not, you can go. Discuss it. I'm not a good man, Elena. I think you've figured that out by now. But I'm not a liar. I'll keep my word about your brother. I'll pay you what I promised. And in 6 months, we'll talk about your future. That's the best I can offer. It wasn't enough, but it was more than she'd had yesterday. Fine. 6 months. Vincent nodded, then surprised her by saying, I need to go talk to my daughter. Try to explain why Uncle Thomas isn't coming back. Try to be the father I should have been all along. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, Elena, I'm glad you're here. You're the first person in years who's told me the truth, even when it cost you. That's rare in my world. It's valuable. After he left, Elena sat in the office that had belonged to Thomas Brennan, surrounded by the evidence of his crimes and the consequences of her honesty. Through the window, she could see Olivia in the garden, sitting on a bench, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Elena understood that grief. She'd felt it when her father died, when her mother followed. She'd felt it every day since coming to this estate, grieving the loss of her freedom, her safety, her innocence about what she was capable of doing. She'd condemned a man with her spreadsheets. She'd broken a girl's heart with her truth, and she'd done it all in the name of doing her job, of being like her father, of not being able to see something wrong without trying to fix it. The math doesn't care, she'd told Vincent, but people did. People cared, and people hurt, and people died because of the stories numbers told. Elena turned back to her computer, to the accounts that still needed auditing, to the work that would occupy the next 6 months of her life. Outside, the November afternoon was fading into evening, and somewhere in a warehouse, Thomas Brennan was paying the price for his choices. She wondered what price she'd pay for hers. 5 months passed in a strange rhythm of captivity and purpose. Elena audited, reorganized, and rebuilt Vincent's financial systems from the ground up. She found 3 more people skimming money, small-time operators compared to Brennan, but thieves nonetheless. Each time she reported her findings to Vincent. Each time people disappeared. She tried not to think about what happened to them. Diego visited twice a month, always in public places, always with Marcus watching from a nearby table. Her brother was thriving at Choate. Vincent had made good on that promise, but his eyes held questions Elena couldn't answer. He knew she was trapped. He just didn't know how to free her. Olivia slowly warmed to Elena, drawn by their shared love of mathematics and their shared experience of loss. The girl was brilliant, already taking college-level courses, already planning a future in finance. She reminded Elena of herself at that age, ambitious, determined, trying to build something better from the ashes of grief. And Vincent was the complication Elena hadn't anticipated. They worked together daily, often late into the night. He asked her opinion on matters beyond finance, personnel decisions, strategic planning, even personal issues with Olivia. He brought her coffee the way she liked it. He remembered she hated roses but loved orchids. He made her laugh with dry observations about the absurdities of his world. He treated her like a partner, not a prisoner, and that made everything more confusing. It was late April when everything came crashing down. Elena was in her office, reviewing the quarterly reports, when Marcus appeared in her doorway, his expression grim. "Elena, Vincent needs you in the South Conference room. Now." Something in his tone made her stomach drop. "What's wrong?" "Just come." The conference room was full of men, Vincent's inner circle, the ones who ran his various operations. They all turned when Elena entered, their expressions ranging from hostile to calculating. Vincent stood at the head of the table, his face carved from stone. "Sit," he said, gesturing to an empty chair. Elena sat, her heart pounding. This felt like a trial. Vincent slid a folder across the table to her. "Explain this." Elena opened it. Inside were bank statements, transfer records, and highlighted transactions. Her transactions. Money moving from Vincent's accounts to an offshore account she'd never seen before. Dates going back 3 months. Amounts totaling over $1 million. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't do this. Vincent, I would never—" "The transfers all have your digital signature," one of the men said. His name was Robert Chen, and he'd never liked Elena. "They were initiated from your computer, during hours when you were working alone in your office." "That's impossible. I didn't make these transfers." "Then who did?" Chen's voice was sharp. "Because the evidence says you've been stealing from Vincent for months, just like Brennan, just like all the others you supposedly caught." Elena's mind raced. This was a setup. Someone had framed her, used her access to make it look like she was the thief. But who? And why? "Vincent, please. You know me. You know I wouldn't do this." Vincent's expression was unreadable. "Do I? I knew Thomas Brennan for 8 years, and he stole from me. I've known you for 5 months. Why should I trust you over the evidence? Because the evidence is fake. Someone's setting me up." That's what Brennan said too. Elena stood, her hands flat on the table. "Then check the metadata. Check the IP addresses. Check anything that will prove these transfers didn't come from me. Vincent, I'm an accountant. If I was going to steal from you, I'd be smart enough not to leave a trail this obvious." "Maybe you wanted to get caught," Chen suggested. "Maybe you were planning to run and wanted to take one last big score before you did." "That's insane." "Is it?" Chen pulled out another document. "Because we also found communications between you and an FBI agent, Special Agent Sarah Morrison. You've been talking to her for weeks." Elena's blood turned to ice. "No, I haven't talked to any FBI agent. I don't even know who that is. Your phone records say otherwise. My phone is monitored. You control who I talk to. How could I possibly—" Elena stopped, realization dawning. This is all fake. The transfers, the phone records, all of it. Someone's trying to make it look like I'm working with the FBI to bring you down. Vincent's jaw tightened. Why would someone do that? Because I'm good at my job. Because I found Brennan and the others. Because someone else is stealing from you. And they want me gone before I find them too. The room fell silent. Then Chen laughed, a harsh sound. "That's convenient. Blame some phantom thief to cover your own crimes." "It's not convenient, it's logical." Elena turned to Vincent, pleading. "Think about it. I've saved you millions by finding the leaks in your system. Why would I throw that away to steal a fraction of what I've recovered? It doesn't make sense. Unless you were planning to steal much more, Chen said. Unless the FBI offered you witness protection in exchange for testimony. Unless you've been playing Vincent from the beginning. I haven't. Vincent, please. You know me. You know I'm not lying. Vincent stared at her for a long moment, and Elena saw the war in his eyes. Trust versus evidence. Instinct versus logic. Finally he said, Marcus, take Elena to her room. Post guards. No one in or out without my permission. Vincent, I need time to think, to investigate. If you're innocent, we'll prove it. If you're not, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Marcus's hand closed on Elena's arm, gentle but implacable. As he led her from the room, she heard Chen say, You're too soft on her, Vincent. In the old days, we would have handled this already. The old days got my father killed, Vincent replied. I do things differently. But as the door closed behind Elena, she wondered if differently would be enough to save her. Back in her room, her cell, Elena paced like a caged animal. Someone had framed her perfectly. The digital signatures, the timing, the FBI contact. It was all designed to make her look guilty. But who and how had they accessed her computer, her accounts, her phone? The answer came to her at midnight as she stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. There was only one person with that level of access, one person who could manipulate the systems without raising suspicion. Robert Chen, Vincent's IT security chief, the man who'd been so quick to accuse her, so ready with evidence. Elena's mind raced through the implications. Chen had the skills to fake the digital trail. He had the access to plant evidence on her computer. He had the motive. If he was stealing from Vincent, Elena was a threat. And he had the opportunity. He'd been present at every security briefing, knew every system she'd implemented to catch thieves. But how could she prove it? She was locked in her room, her computer confiscated, her phone gone. She had no way to investigate, no way to clear her name. Unless Elena moved to the window. It was a 20-foot drop to the garden below, but there was a trellis covered in ivy. Risky, but possible. And the guard was stationed at her door, not watching the exterior. She'd never broken out of anywhere in her life, but she'd never been framed for a crime she didn't commit either. Elena changed into dark clothes, tied her hair back, and opened the window as quietly as she could. The April night was cool, carrying the scent of the sound and the promise of rain. She could hear voices from other parts of the estate, the normal sounds of Vincent's world continuing while her life fell apart. The trellis held her weight, barely. Elena climbed down, her heart pounding, expecting at any moment to hear shouts or alarms. But she made it to the ground undetected, landing in the soft earth of a flower bed. Now came the hard part. She needed to get to Chen's office in the West Wing, access his computer, and find evidence of his theft before anyone discovered she was gone. It was insane. It was impossible. It was her only chance. Elena moved through the shadows of the estate, using every bit of knowledge she'd gained in 5 months of captivity. She knew where the cameras were, where the guards patrolled, where the blind spots existed. She moved like a ghost through Vincent's empire, invisible and desperate. Chen's office was locked, but Elena had watched him enter his code enough times to memorize it. The door clicked open, and she slipped inside, closing it silently behind her. His computer was password protected, but Elena had one advantage. She understood how Chen thought. He was arrogant, convinced of his own superiority. His password would be something obvious to him, obscure to others. She tried his daughter's name and birthday. Nothing. His wife's name. Nothing. Then, on a hunch, she tried Vincent Sucks 23. The computer unlocked. Elena almost laughed at the audacity. Chen had been stealing from Vincent while literally mocking him in his password. She worked quickly, searching through files, following digital breadcrumbs. And there it was, a folder labeled Insurance, hidden in a directory of system backups. Inside were records of Chen's thefts going back 3 years, carefully documented. Amounts, dates, methods. He'd stolen over $5 million, using techniques so sophisticated that even Elena's audits had missed them. There were also files on Elena, her real background, her father's death, her mother's debts. Chen had investigated her thoroughly, looking for leverage. And when he realized she was too honest to blackmail and too competent to fool, he'd decided to frame her instead. Elena copied everything to a USB drive, her hands shaking. She had the evidence. She could prove her innocence. She just had to get it to Vincent before looking for something. Elena spun around. Robert Chen stood in the doorway, a gun in his hand, his expression cold. "You're smarter than I thought," he said, closing the door behind him. "I figured you'd just wait in your room like a good little prisoner, but you had to go and prove me right. You are dangerous. Vincent will know you did this. The evidence is right here. Evidence I'll delete as soon as I delete you. They'll find your body in the Sound, another tragic accident. Vincent will mourn, Olivia will cry, and life will go on. And I'll keep stealing from that arrogant bastard until I have enough to disappear." Elena's mind raced. She had the USB drive in her pocket, but Chen had a gun. She needed to stall, to think, to find a way out. "Why?" she asked. "You had a good position, Vincent's trust. Why throw it away?" "Because I'm tired of being the help. I built his systems, secured his empire, and what do I get? A salary and a pat on the head. Meanwhile, Vincent lives like a king, and his spoiled daughter gets everything handed to her. I earned more than that. So, you stole it. I took what I deserved, and I would have kept taking it if you hadn't shown up with your red pen and your self-righteous honesty. You're just like your father, Elena, too principled for your own good. Look where it got him." Rage flooded through Elena, hot and clarifying. "My father died with his integrity intact." "What will you die with?" Chen's face twisted. "I'm not the one dying tonight." He raised the gun, and Elena knew she had seconds to act. She grabbed the only thing within reach, a heavy glass paperweight from Chen's desk, and threw it with all her strength. It hit Chen's hand, and the gun went off, the sound deafening in the small office. Elena felt a burning pain in her shoulder, but didn't stop moving. She lunged forward, slamming into Chen, fighting for the weapon. They crashed into the desk, then the wall. Chen was stronger, but Elena was desperate. She clawed at his face, kicked at his knees, fought with everything she had. The door burst open. Marcus filled the doorway, his own gun drawn, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. Behind him, Vincent appeared, his face a mask of fury. "Elena, down!" Marcus shouted. Elena dropped, and Marcus fired. Chen crumpled, the gun falling from his hand. The room spun. Elena tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. She looked down and saw blood spreading across her shirt, dark and wet. "Elena!" Vincent was beside her, catching her as she fell. "Get the doctor. Now!" "The USB drive," Elena mumbled, her vision blurring. "In my pocket. Evidence. Chen was stealing. I'm innocent. The world went dark. Elena woke in a hospital room, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked the Sound. For a moment, she was disoriented, unsure where she was or how she'd gotten there. Then the memories flooded back. Chen, the gun, the fight. She was alive. "You're awake." Vincent's voice came from beside the bed. He looked exhausted, his shirt wrinkled, his jaw shadowed with stubble. "The doctor said you'd be fine. The bullet went through your shoulder, missed everything important. You'll need physical therapy, but you'll recover fully." Elena's throat was dry. "How long?" 2 days. "You lost a lot of blood. We had to bring in a private surgeon. Couldn't exactly take you to a regular hospital with a gunshot wound and no good explanation." "Chen?" "Dead. Marcus's shot was clean." Vincent's expression was grim. "We found everything on the USB drive. You were right. Chen had been stealing for years, and he framed you when you got too close. I'm sorry, Elena. I should have trusted you. You didn't know. I should have." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "You've been nothing but honest since the day you corrected my math. You've saved me millions, caught thieves, rebuilt my systems. And when it mattered, I doubted you. That was my failure, not yours." Elena shifted, wincing at the pain in her shoulder. "What happens now?" Vincent was quiet for a moment. "That's up to you. Your 6 months are up. I promised we'd discuss your future, so let's discuss it. I want to leave." The words came out automatically, the answer she'd been preparing for months. "Okay." Elena blinked, surprised. "Okay? Just like that?" "Just like that. I'll set you up with a new identity if you want one, or you can go back to your old life. Diego's scholarship will continue regardless. That was never contingent on your employment. Your salary will be paid in full, plus a bonus for everything. You'll be free, Elena. No guards, no monitoring, no cage. It was everything she'd wanted. Everything she'd dreamed about during 5 months of captivity. So why did it feel wrong? "What about your finances? The systems I built? I'll find someone else. It won't be as good, but I'll manage. And Olivia? She's been asking me to help her with her college applications. She'll understand. Elena stared at the ceiling, thinking. She thought about her father, who died for his principles. She thought about Diego, thriving at a school she could never have afforded. She thought about Olivia, brilliant and damaged, and in need of someone who understood loss. She thought about Vincent, dangerous and complicated, and surprisingly honorable in his own twisted way. She thought about the red pen, and how one moment of instinct had led her here. "I want to make a deal," she said finally. Vincent raised an eyebrow. "You're in a hospital bed with a gunshot wound, and you want to negotiate? I learned from the best." Elena met his eyes. "I'll stay. But not as a prisoner, as a partner. A partner. I want a percentage of the profits from the legitimate businesses. I want a say in major financial decisions. I want the freedom to come and go as I please, to see Diego whenever I want, to have my own life outside these walls. And I want your word that you'll start transitioning the organization toward legitimate operations. I won't help you run a criminal empire forever, Vincent. But I'll help you build something legal, something sustainable, something your daughter can be proud of." Vincent was silent for a long time, studying her face. "That's a lot to ask. You asked me to trust you when you locked me in this estate. Now I'm asking you to trust me, to believe that I can help you build something better than what your father left you. And if I say no, then I leave, and you find another accountant who'll miss the next Robert Chen until it's too late." Vincent laughed, a genuine sound of surprise and respect. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Elena Martinez. Maybe both. Do we have a deal?" He extended his hand. "Partners. But Elena, if you ever betray me, if you ever put my daughter or my people at risk, there won't be a second chance. Understood?" "Understood." She shook his hand, feeling the familiar calluses, the strength in his grip. "And Vincent, if you ever lock me up again, I'll find a way to bankrupt you so thoroughly that you'll be begging on street corners. Understood?" His smile was sharp and approving. "Understood." 3 months later, Elena stood in her new office, not in the estate, but in a downtown Hartford high-rise that housed Kane Industries' legitimate operations. The view stretched across the city, and for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. Diego visited her there, marveling at the space, proud of his sister's success. He didn't know the full story, probably never would, but he knew she was safe, she was free, and she was building something important. Olivia had been accepted to Yale's business program, with plans to join the family business after graduation. She and Elena had lunch every week, talking about finance and loss, and the complicated men who shaped their lives. And Vincent was keeping his word. Slowly, carefully, he was shifting resources from the gray areas of his empire toward legitimate ventures. It would take years, maybe decades, but Elena could see the path forward. She could see a future where Kane Industries was known for construction and real estate and innovation, not for the shadows it had emerged from. It wasn't perfect. Elena still knew too much, was still complicit in things she'd rather not think about, but she was making a difference. She was using her father's gift, the ability to see patterns, to tell stories with numbers, to build something better. On her desk sat a red pen, the same one she'd used to correct Vincent's ledger all those months ago. She kept it as a reminder. One moment of instinct, one choice to speak truth, could change everything. The rain that had fallen the night she'd arrived at the Kane estate had long since passed. Outside her window, the July sun blazed over Hartford, bright and hot and full of promise. Elena picked up the red pen, smiled, and got back to work. The math didn't care who you were or where you came from. It only cared about truth. And Elena Martinez, daughter of an honest accountant, sister to a brilliant engineer-to-be, partner to a reformed criminal, had plenty of truth left to tell. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed Elena and Vincent's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional, dramatic stories. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought. Did Elena make the right choice? Could you forgive Vincent? What would you have done in her position? I love hearing your thoughts and perspectives from around the world. Until next time, remember, sometimes the smallest actions, like correcting a simple mistake, can change everything.